We have over 3,000 companies we work for. We have 223 people. I can't name anybody who's less than an A player on the entire team. We're like the largest general contractor in the world. You have to acknowledge, as being a Gen Xers or a baby boomer, that it may be better than what we did before. People issues are the biggest issues if you own a small business. And I'm sure all your listeners will be shaking their head right now and be like,
That's right.
people issues consumes most of my time, most of my resources.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Wolfe. I'm a serial entrepreneur across franchising, construction, real estate, and online education. My mission is to transfer courage to you, our listeners, by sharing the real and raw stories of success from 7, 8, even 9-figure business owners. Today, we are joined by Scott Arias, the CEO of Ace Consulting. Scott's story is nothing short of incredible, overcoming a devastating motorcycle accident and battling with prescription drug addiction to build a multi-divisional 8-figure commercial construction consulting company. This is Scott's second time on the show, and it's been about a year since he's been here, and I'm pumped to catch up with him. We'll dive into how he's successfully navigated multi-generational workforces while continuing to drive success at Ace Consulting. In this episode specifically, you'll learn 3 things: the biggest differences across the generations.
Everyone thinks it's like even slots time frame wise, but it's
Right.
not. It's by historical events.
How these differences impact the hiring process.
That's where it really comes home to somebody who's an entrepreneur like myself, or your audience, is understanding that one is not better than the other.
And Scott even gives the actual questions he uses in interviews to find A players.
I want to give you an idea of some of the interview questions that I ask people.
If you want to learn how to build a successful business while navigating the complexities of a multi-generational workforce, you're in the right place. Stick around. This is one episode you won't want to miss. Enjoy the show. What's up, Scott? Welcome back to the King stage. How are you, man?
Good, Chaz. How you been?
Dude, we've been rocking and rolling. I know you were on the show like last April. Does that sound right? Something like that?
It doesn't seem that long, but as we get older, it seems to go by faster.
Yeah, there was one little snippet in my mind that was like, that felt a long time ago. We've probably done like 300 episodes since then.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
But
and just kind of catch everybody up who's listening. You're not just, in the construction field. You're touching all kinds of business owners in construction, but give us a little backdrop of your business and how you help them.
we focus on construction for 2 of our 4 sectors. One of them being pre-construction. Also, we just changed the name to project controls because that more nearly represents that's project schedules, that kind of thing. And our staffing side is strictly site management staffing. So we don't do skilled trades or anything like that. We do, site superintendents, SSHO, quality control managers. And then the other 2 sectors, one is training. And because I taught at a university for a decade, it aligns up with that. So I do a lot. I mean, I do project training, anything that has a finite deadline. And then the last sector is something that we added a few years ago and has gone through the roof, and that's security services. So we've done security services for top 10 billion-dollar corporations, all the way down to small little rinky-dinky projects throughout the United States and overseas too. We're working on one right now for a casino, so we do security services for a lot of different sectors. And I brought my brother in. My brother was one of the most senior officers in the security realm within the Navy before he retired. And so since he's been retired, he's been helping me out doing different things. Even though I'm his younger brother, he helps me.
Yeah, that's awesome. To make it clear for the listener, when you're saying security, site superintendents, all that, you're placing people into those roles on a temporary basis, or is it a permanent type of placement? Give us a little bit more detail there.
The staffing sector is a project-based model because that's what we do, So if you don't have a project to go to, they don't go anywhere. So, and the reason we did that is because it's difficult as a contractor to hire something that has a project, hire a high quality person, not knowing if you're going to have a project after that. If you're going to hire, someone of the caliber and the quality, you need to entice them with having a future. And that's what we do. We're like the largest general contractor in the world. We have, over 3,000 companies we work for. And so that's it. There are staff, but they serve as a management, kind of a little bit different dynamic, because they also, from an ethical perspective, you can't look at quality and safety if you're ingrained within a company totally. you know?
Yeah.
So that's one. And but the security sector crosses all sectors. We do both administrative, doing site assessments, going and looking at and advising, all the way to providing site personnel. So
Yeah.
it's more physical security, but we do provide some IT security services also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head. That's kind of what I was hoping that you would get to there. But anyone that's in construction, even like you said, the small rinky dink, projects, it's about managing pieces and deadlines and making things concrete and being able to say what you or do what you said you were going to do.
Mhm.
And so many folks in contracting, residential, commercial, whatever, fall victim to not being able to execute. And so I've always loved what you do, but I just wanted to make sure that they knew who they were talking to. They're talking to the king of this. I mean, like you said, you're the largest of what you do, and you've got these super A players on your team. They can come in on a project type basis and help your clients win a single project, and then they can go, on to the next client or whatever. That your client doesn't have to worry about keeping them on staff, right?
Yeah, I know. We have 223 people, so I can't name anybody who's less than an A player on the entire team. We're very fortunate, but you also got to put a lot of effort into hiring, because to
Yeah,
get A players, you got to know what an A player is.
yeah,
So, and if you don't know, research it, because it's a term, but it was coined in a book a long, long time ago.
yeah. What book?
I've got, you asked me that, and then I don't have the answer to that. So
That's all right. We'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry.
I
We'll
have
get
it.
it the
I
right.
have it. I have it on my Audible account. So,
That's fair.
so
That's about how it rolls for me. I'm like, I heard that once, and in the 17 million books I have in my Audible, that's how it rolls. Okay. Well, and so hiring A players is a certain process. Obviously, you've got it dialed in. Your clients don't have to think about that. They just hire you.
that's absolutely correct. And we handle all the administrative things. People issues are the biggest issues if you own a small business. And I'm sure all your listeners will be shaking their head right now and be like,
That's right.
people issues consumes most of my time, most of my resources, and we handle those type of things. And I have people on staff that do nothing but handle personal issues. Somebody has a death in the family. This new generation want is they don't want just a commitment between 9 to 5, or in construction 7 to 7. It seems like sometimes, but they want to know that you care about them.
Yeah.
So, which is a little touchy feely, but I think it's been well received by my company of being a crucial function of leadership.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just dive right into it. I mean, the bigger topic here that you just referenced is in a lot of businesses, but specifically construction. We are dealing with three generations. We've got Generation X, Generation Millennials, and then Generation Z. And really, it's X and millennials make up about 75% of the workforce, maybe a little bit more, maybe close to 80. And you've got about a 10 or 15% on the Z. And so you've got very different people, expectations, what they consider work, what they consider hard work, what they consider consistency and reliability, what they're looking for in return, like you kind of just mentioned. And so let's just start from a high level. Why are we here? Why do we have three different generations all in the mix? And what should the listener do to like pay attention or to just become aware of this first?
So I sat through a generational presentation recently, probably within the last month, and they discussed the different generations. And one thing you didn't mention was the boomers, but
Yeah.
the
Oh
reason you
yeah.
probably didn't mention the boomers is the boomers are literally with one foot out the door at this
Yeah.
point. So generations are really categorized by significant events that have occurred during a lifetime that form their perspective and form their what they think is acceptable, what they don't think is acceptable. And you take like Generation X, okay? Generation X is my generation, and Generation X were more formed during the 80s. It was, also known as the me generation, So it was a lot about personal performance, that type of thing. They also, didn't really care about, what was happening at home. I remember one of my bosses once said, he goes, the difference between me and you is I take care of my business at home and you don't. So he didn't have any caring whatsoever. And that was the school of thought that I grew up on. Now, the millennial generation shortly occurred after the Gen X, because Gen X is the smallest generation by numbers. And then you got the millennials, which occurred right in the early 80s perspective when they were born. and they were more formed during um, you know uh, events like 9/11, for example.
Right.
um, and so they're big believer millennials are a big believer in, you know doing it as a team, coming together, because that was the world that existed when they were their formative years,
Yeah.
And then you have the Gen Zers, which are more formed during the Great Recession kind of time frame. Everyone thinks it's like even slots time frame wise, but it's
Right.
not. It's
Yeah.
by historical events. And they occurred during the Great Recession. So, the way they go about their business has to do a lot with being a little more risk adverse, a little more, thinking about the future and wanting to be involved in an organization that cares about them. So it's those generations, there's just challenges with each of those. And if you come from one generation to the other, or even if you're on the borderline of one generation, like I am, you're going to understand some of those beliefs and philosophies.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to it. Obviously, as you kind of laid it all out, we can all probably imagine the people that are on our teams or even just in our families. It's like, oh yeah, there's pretty distinct differences. It's funny. I was in a workshop this past weekend, giving some information on sales and marketing and stuff like that, and we were talking about avatar and like the places where your avatar hangs out is where you want to be marketing. And
Mhm,
and this has a lot to do with what you're saying, even from like a non like employee team building perspective, but from a marketing perspective. Who is my client? Well,
mhm,
as a millennial Gen X client base, you know, f- places like Facebook are going to be better than Snapchat or whatever. We can go into the marketing stuff, but I think that what you're saying, what I'm picking up, and I want the listener to make sure that they're getting is that there's distinct differences between these generations. And now what you're saying is, okay, well, now we've got them all working on the same job site or in the same project, maybe in different capacities, but they're 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 bringing something different to the table. They're also expecting something
mhm.
different. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, hey, and that's the key here, and that's where it really comes home to somebody who's an entrepreneur like myself, or your audience, is understanding that one is not better than the other, although we want to think that way.
Sure. Yep.
I want to think that way, to be honest with you, because I want to say Gen X is the best, but the truth is that we were we were cultivated by the environment we grew up in, so that right there makes them. And one of the big takeaways that I got from the entire 2 hour presentation I sat through is that Gen Xers care more about individuals, millennials and Gen Zs care more about the group winning, you know and there's benefits and drawbacks to that. I mean, one of the benefits is they're really big into the whole, hey, the company is my team, or my sector is my team, and I'll
Right.
die for my team, not
Sure.
literally but figuratively.
Yeah.
But on the other side, Gen Z's are like, I'm going to show my performance. It's not that I don't care about the team, but I'm going to focus on my performance, because as long as my performance is there, it does what it does need to be for a team. So it's just, they're just different ways of looking and seeing things through the lens of the different generations.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking as you were kind of saying that, an experience that I had working for a pretty big marketer, we would all know his name, but inside of that environment, I'm running, a pretty big team, and I'm an executive. I park in a specific spot. I've got
Hmm.
access and privileges that most people don't, and we're building this brand new thing. And the feeling that I had as a millennial was, wow, it's kind of like everybody just has a number here. There's not really a whole lot of like
Hmm.
team dynamic. There's not really a whole lot of care specifically. It was more being run by a boomer slash Gen Xer who is probably more considered about the individual. And my millennial mind in that moment was like, if I'm building a team, but nobody cares about the team, I'm struggling trying to connect these dots here.
Yes, yes, and that's the thing is, and then they don't. And the interesting thing is that none of them respect each other. All the different they all think that that their generation is the generation that it's everyone should you know fall
Yeah.
into. The other one here is that I haven't even jumped into yet, has to do with the way they view life, or way
Right.
they view their profession. I mean, my generation and the generation before me, the baby boomers, they believed we lived to work. So they didn't care about working 70-hour work weeks, and that was the school of thought I came up through because, I started out as a very young man working in various different capacities. And that's what my bosses told me. So I adopted that, that expectation. But today's generation, I think, honestly has a right to a certain degree. They don't live to work, they work to live. They're more focused on work-life balance. If I said work-life balance to my first boss, he would have slapped me in the face,
Yeah.
and or punched me one way or the other. But
Yeah.
the fact is that's who we have now. And most of my staff, falls into the millennial generation, and that's what they want. They want a place where they can come work hard every single day. They don't mind checking emails in the evenings, but they don't want to work 70-hour work weeks. That's just
Right.
the reality. And it's tough because we're saying this about everybody and we're stereotyping here, but the reality
Yeah.
is that there's a lot to be said for those statements there.
Yeah, I think if you just zoom out, right, like 200 years ago, and there was no work life balance, right? It was just survival,
Mhm.
probably as maybe a better term, especially 2,000 years ago. Like you just keep going back and back and back. And their reality of life back then seems almost traumatic to us today. And so there's just a natural progression, right? But how much in that, especially the work life balance, I like you. I'm like, ugh, I kind of cringe at work life balance. I
Mhm.
say work life obsession because I do want life and work, but I want to be obsessed on both. But how much does the just psychological growth or just emotional intelligence and how that's grown? How has that played a role in maybe a millennial or Gen Z worker? Right, because like you said, they're more in touch with their feelings, which really just means I'm more heightened or I'm more conscious of emotional intelligence. How has that played a role versus, maybe an X or a boomer who's like, we weren't allowed to have feelings. You just put your head down and take care of your business because that's what life was.
That's a tough one. Links I put in the generational. It's about how where their formative years were were cultivated by this of these type of events, and one of them, technology being a big one. I mean, the reality is I didn't have a cell phone when I started working. I didn't have a cell phone till my almost my mid-level career, so
Yeah.
that has changed everything. And then smartphones, the other one. I mean, you can't spurt off a fact anymore without somebody fact checking you.
Right.
So it's so easy to do nowadays. And the fact is, you have the world of knowledge right here,
Yeah.
and that's crazy, that in your palm of your hand, you could literally look up anything that's ever been written about any topic you want. And when I went through my dissertation process, I started in the 2013-ish time frame. It One of my major professors said, everybody nowadays should get have to do two, dissertations. And I said, why? And he goes, because it's so easy to do the literature review, which is entire chapter two and the foundation of your research. And I thought about that, and he's right.
Yeah.
It is so much easier rather than going to the library and opening a book. Now you can go into websites like ProQuest and then do a keyword search and and get all the information that you need. There's still a lot of data, but it's much easier to search for it. So that's one. Technology is one. The other piece of it is people don't give enough credence is these Gen Zs, their formative years had to do with COVID too.
Yeah.
So personalities and things like that, and I've noticed when I was teaching, and I still teach part time as an adjunct from time to time, just because I love doing it, and is that maybe their entire years weren't formed by that, but they thrive with the environment. Like, you can't get one of my younger staff to pick up the phone to call somebody. They want
Yeah.
to text everybody. It's just an interesting dynamic, and you got to figure out as an entrepreneur how to navigate your way through each of these different generational differences. And we just did this recently with our phone systems. We switched over from a traditional phone system where you pick up the dial and talk to somebody, but that's antiquated. And
Oh yeah.
so now we have a web-based one where, you do it through your computer. If you do it through your phone, there's a separate app via your phone. And that's just, I still have cable at my house, and most of my staff
They don't even know
doesn't
what it
have
is.
cable. They don't even know what satellite TV is. They they
Yeah.
they know Netflix. Even
That's right.
Netflix nowadays is kind of a distant term, they have many different other avenues. I
Yeah.
found out a little bit more about Spotify the other day, and when I was talking about Sirius, I can listen to Sirius on my phone, So it's and my son's like, "Well, Spotify is so much better." I was like, "Well, what's Spotify? Let's start there." So
Yeah. Well, how have you seen this play into the workplace, specifically even construction? Because as you're saying these technology things, I have young kids like 10 and below, and it's so crazy how my 8-year-old daughter will pick up my phone. They don't they don't have their own phone by any means, and I'm a stickler on not overindulging, but I also need them to
Mhm,
learn technology because I know it's going to be a huge part of what they do. And so none of my children, I think my 10-year-old just the other day learned how to type on a phone, like with her thumbs, right?
mhm,
But everything, 100% is pick up and talk to Siri. Whether they're searching for something, whether they're texting something, whether like anything that they want to do on the phone, it's all done through voice activation. And for me as a millennial, like I understand it's there. I use it sometimes, but for whatever reason, I like to type out what I'm searching. It makes it feel more detailed and more precise and whatever. But they don't even know how to type. And so as they're learning the technology, they're just leaning into what they know. Right. So all of that as a backdrop, how are you seeing this technology gap between generations show up, on a construction project?
it's kinda like, you know, using a nail gun when you, used to use a hammer, you know?
Right.
The guys now just carry hammers to drive a nail that maybe the nail gun didn't put it all the way in?
Right.
So, it's just doesn't mean that it's not it's you have to acknowledge as being a Gen Xers or a baby boomer that it may be better than what we did before. However, there are certain things that are downfalls. One of them being is when there's an issue, I tell my people, pick up the phone and call the person,
Yeah.
rather than fighting it over email because you can get it lost in tone. I mean,
Yep.
we've all had an email where we thought we sent an email with the right perspective and somebody takes offense to it, especially Gen Zers.
Yeah, well, because I mean, like we talked about a few minutes ago, they're maybe more conscious of feelings or how things are being perceived, and so rather than an X or a boomer just saying, "Well, whatever it is, what it is," because they are that way, they're going to be more heightened, not necessarily to offense, but yes, could be just they're just aware of when I read this email, it made me feel this way and
Mhm.
whether that was intended or not. And so you're right, staying out of written communication for that reason is huge. How do you think this, I mean, we've talked technology and maybe a couple of other things, but you're huge on core values, and I know that your company specifically is built on core values. But how do you see the generational pieces that we've just talked about and the gaps between them? How do you talk about the same core value, which could maybe be even defined differently via
Mm.
different generations? How are you dealing with that?
My three core values are do the right thing, be the gold standard, and practice extreme urgency. I'm going to get slaughtered by all my staff because I'm sure I left a word out there or something. But the
Yeah,
point
yeah,
is right? We call it RUG, right thing, urgency, gold standard, right? So, what does urgency mean? You know, urgency in my generation meant when I get back to my computer or answer a phone call. But now, urgency has to revolve around 24/7, you know.
right.
But then you also got the whole work-life balance thing, so that's also plays into it. The hardest one that I struggle with is not the gold standard or the urgency, it's do the right thing. And the reason, my organization is a Christian organization, not afraid to say it, just who we are. It's comes out of my faith originally, being the founder, now the CEO. And so I've had to explain that much better, and the best way to get some of those messages across is to continually communicate and communicate examples of what that means. So when we have every meeting that has 3 or more people in my company, we the person in charge of the meeting, the facilitator of the meeting, that person's always supposed to ask, give me 3 examples of our core values, and what are they?" And so they go through do the right thing, urgency, gold standard, and then they go through and they said, "Well, I seen this person doing the right thing because they had a client call, was all mad or all upset, and rather than get mad and upset, they chose to help them." You know, or this person had a relative died, and us as a company, even though we didn't have an obligation, we paid for the funeral or we sent them home, you know? And to me, that's where and it was brought to one of my mid-level staff, and he brought up a very good point, and that is, what does it mean? So the only way I could do is just have, every time we bring it up, we bring an example to the table, and then that way we have it. And I hate to say that doing the right thing is subjective, but it's tough because you work with three different generations here, and do the right thing may be to help the group rather than help the individual,
That's right.
you know? So,
Yeah, and to be able to have space to delineate those things, I think is also important as well. That's what you're doing by creating the space and not only just giving the examples, but having people be in the room to talk about it. I think that, the different generations are going to respond, differently. That is interesting though, because you're right. Doing the right thing is not subjective, although it's completely subjective.
yes.
And my experience around how to treat someone else. It's funny. We were doing a workshop, I don't know, about a month or so ago, and my COO of Gathering the Kings gave an example of how he grew up thinking the golden rule was to do unto others as you would have done unto you. And he's like,
Mhm.
that's actually that's really not the best rule. The platinum rule, which is written in a book about do unto others as they would have done to themselves. Because sometimes what's good for Chaz isn't what's good for Scott or
Mhm.
the boomer worker that I'm reporting to, or that's reporting to me, or the Gen Xer, right? And so we've got to think a little bit more outside of ourselves and kind of through the lens of the other person and or even greater team. Would you agree with that?
Mhm. Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And you think about uh, and I think about construction right offhand because our field staff are more rough around the edges. Because I grew up as a field staff, I was a carpenter, mason, and we're more rough around the edges. And I tell everybody I'm a sailor and a construction worker, so I may have a couple things to say that that probably not acceptable when I'm in an environment with a whole bunch of accountants.
Right.
So understanding, we always talking about office talk or field talk, and that's how we delineate. Hey, it's not okay to walk in the office and drop the f bomb. It's just
Right.
not that's not appropriate to do. So you're talking about treating people the way that they want to be treated is recognizing the way they want to be treated, and then changing your behavior to be able to match that. And it's not being ingenuine, it's
No.
just changing, making yourself better, and in a lot of different ways. Or at the end of the day, one of the Christians values that I always speak and my church speaks is it's love God, love people, right? So part of loving people is meaning where they're at. Part of loving God is understanding that.
Yeah.
And some people may call that touchy feely. I call it the reality of the world that we live in as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah, just like you said a few minutes ago, we can either embrace technology, we can embrace new psychology, or we can't. We can just throw up our hands and say, "Nope, I've always done it this way. It is what it is. That's not better." We have seen time and time again that how those people, businesses, frameworks, mindsets just get swept away. Technology is coming. New psychology, more emotional intelligence is coming, or it's already here. To your point. Yeah, it's interesting that you remind people. It's not even just really Christians, but people of the two things that Jesus said there. The top, all these rules. What's the most important? It's like, well, love God, love others. And I say those same things to my kids on a regular basis. It's like, no, look, literally everything falls out of this right here.
Mhm,
Have reverence. The fact that you are not it, right? Like you were
mhm,
created by something other than yourself. And
mhm.
then over here, there's other people. Let's see them through the lens of maybe the person that created them as well. They're probably pretty special, and we should probably treat them as such. you
Absolutely,
know?
absolutely. Hey, good lessons for life, child raising or business or whatever.
Yep.
My father used to say, you can't do a good deal with a bad person. And there's a lot to be said there. So
Yeah.
not saying people are inherently bad, but the way they view is based on the way they were raised and the culture they're part of.
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things. on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah. Just kind of going on that whim there, just for a few minutes here. I mean, obviously, you guys have a huge team. You have a hiring process. I'm sure that's just an amazing format and framework. But how has that even changed as you're now? I mean, you could go from today interviewing 2 people, and you have no idea which generation that they're going to be. Probably the responses and interactions in those interviews are going to be completely different. How's that changed for you guys?
Well, you know what I do? Well, first of all, as an entrepreneur, I believe, regardless of your business, people are the most important piece. Even if you make widgets, it doesn't matter. People make widgets.
That's right.
So people are the most important piece of your company, also because they change and whatever. So the interview process is founded on the whole belief that we have our entire management team there. So we do the first couple interviews and know that this is the person that we want as a player. And then we assemble what we call our ones, which is the 7 top executives in my company, and then they do the final interview. And that's important. Number one is because we want people to know that, hey, we're saying it, but we believe it, because I'm taking my 30 minutes, an hour, and I'm depending upon you. The other thing is the questions. And if it'd be okay, I want to give you an idea of some of the interview questions that
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that I ask people. It's funny. Once again, keep it on my phone. so, uh, so one of the things that I do was I ask, "Do you have any unfulfilled dreams?"
What kind of responses do you get?
I've had people say, I thought when I was growing up I was going to be a nurse. And then I ultimately decided that this is what I was going to do profession, and it changed because of this. So you
Sure.
kind of get the life story, kind of pull it out of them. Other
Yep.
things are something that's right in line with where they are. You can tell a lot of people by their unfulfilled dreams, being like, okay, I acknowledge the fact I'm not there yet, or I'm working to get there, but this is what I want to do. I had one gentleman come in and he said, I want to be a senior executive with this company. Well, there's a lot of drive there. And why? What do you? And there's a lot of other questions there. Why this company? So I also ask them what they know about our company, because that's critical. Do they do their homework? Because I
Yeah.
want people who did their homework. I don't want people who just are walking in the door. And the last one is the most important one. Is I do speed questions, speed round questions, and I ask them questions like this, and they have to answer within. I tell them within 5 seconds. So these are a list of them. A dog or cat? Blue or and I asked that because I'm a dog person. So no, I
Oh,
just
I was
but
say everybody knows the difference.
but blue or red. Somebody once said to me when I talked about blue and red, or they said, "Are you talking about politics?" I was like, "No,
Oh,
because I don't know what color is what, to be honest with you. Maybe I need to
yeah.
change it to
You
to
might, yeah,
red or
green and
purple."
yellow.
I something, but there's a green party too, so maybe not
Oh,
green,
yeah.
but
That's right.
oceans or mountains, dawn or dusk, fall or spring, winter or summer, cars or trucks, country or rap, chicken or egg, dad or mom, cold or hot, triggered or unoffendable. I love that one right there, because if you're triggered working in construction, there's
Mhm.
about 90,000 people that are probably a lot more than that are going to trigger you. If I'm going to be a therapist, okay. But if you're going to work in construction, you have to be able to determine what is acceptable. And then I asked a personal one about University of Kentucky or University of Louisville. My daughter goes to University of Louisville, but I'm a Kentucky fan. So
Mhm.
I want to know where they fall. Are they blue or red? So in not a political sense, in a sports sense.
The triggered, untriggered part. There's a spot in the book of psycho cybernetics that talks about basically what thick skin is, and how you've got to be able to have skin. I mean, our literal skin is what protects us,
Hmm.
but it keeps us away from certain things, certain pain. But it doesn't mean that it's not penetratable or doesn't experience pain. It just keeps us from certain things that allow us to kind of just have a little buoyancy. Like it hit me, and then it bounced off, and I just keep going. It's okay. It's okay to have some of that thick skin, especially in construction.
Well, and you go along that right. One of my first boss told me, he said, you need to build some calluses up. Just everybody knows what calluses are on your hands or
Yep.
whatever. Because
Yeah.
I worked in the trades, and you swing a hammer long enough, you're going to get calluses on your hands. So, and you think about that. Well, how do you get calluses? By doing it over and over and over again, and getting that in deep understanding of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And there's good and bads from that. One of them being the bads I can think of right offhand is you lose perspective on people who don't understand what you do, what they understand. But on the other side of it, if you do things over and over again, you understand that and you understand it in detail. I may have mentioned this, I may not mention it, but I'm a left leg amputee. I lost my lower left leg in a motorcycle crash and then further damage it in an Iraqi oil platform. So that right there, the guy who does my prosthetics for me, he's an amputee too. And to think that he understands that many other amputees or people who do I can never say prosthetists,
Yeah.
that they don't understand is all the intricacies. Like when you sit down with a suction based prosthetic, it feels like a pulling sensation at the bottom. Well, you don't know that unless if you
Unless
wore
you've done
one
it.
before.
Yeah.
So, and that goes with like business and how we conduct things. It makes us understand that we may not have all the knowledge necessary. And if you have a young man or lady that grew up in California or they grew up in the Midwest, different exposures completely. And so you have to be able to treat them, as you said, the way they would like to be treated.
Yeah, different exposures, different calluses. That same chapter in psychocybernetics talks about the callus being scar tissue. Something has happened to cause damage, and that's our body's way of helping us to have buoyancy, to keep going, some resilience. It creates a scar tissue, so that way, when it happens again, the actual damage doesn't happen again. And so you're right. Scars or callus speak to experience and speak to maybe just different perspectives that we have, whether it be
Mhm.
California versus Missouri, And so I think all those things are good, especially when we're in an environment like we are, like we've been talking about this whole show around hiring not only just new generations, but now a mixture of all the generations. What would be kind of like your last, as we kind of wrap up here, entrepreneurs listening right now, maybe they're in construction, maybe not, but they're like, yes, I understand. I've got a couple different generations on my team right now. This has been challenging, difficult. What's your main point takeaway for them of how they can go continue to not only hire well, but then curate this environment of multiple generations? How do we do that well?
That's a great question, and I'll go kind of back to something I said previously because I think it's so vitally important. Is one is not better than the other, and that's important because it gives you, rather than you know totally dismissing somebody's feelings about something or giving credence to somebody's feelings when it's not necessarily justified, or numerous different ways of is understanding that that's somebody's perspective, and we need to be respectful of that while we're trying to get what we need to get out of that person. I'm creating an ESOP, or employee owned stock ownership program, and I want everybody to have skin in the game. And that plays in real well with the generation that I'm in right now. With most of my staff is in. So I would say more than anything, as an entrepreneur, is understanding, identifying what you have and how to move the organization forward, understanding the differences. Because most people don't understand the generational differences, how they're defined, what they mean. It's always every generation just says to the later generations, "Oh, they're terrible." When in reality, this is not terrible. It's just different, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Then that would, I mean, obviously that's ignorance to say it's terrible. It's intelligence to say, this is interesting. It's a little bit different. I wonder how we can incorporate, maybe the best of the best from both worlds or from all three or four of these worlds. I think those are the teams that are going to win, right? It's like, how do we recognize it? No one. How do we just become aware of the room and how the room is now different than it was 20 years ago? Okay,
mhm.
great. How do we move forward in that? I love that direction. Scott, you obviously provide just an incredible service to construction companies all across the country. How can they find you if they're listening right now and they're like, yes, this is majorly beneficial. I need a project manager, or any of the other sources that you've got access to where they can hire you. How can they reach out to you?
Best way to do is look up aceconsulting.net and we have all the contact information there, and or hit me up on LinkedIn, Scott Arias. Last name is spelled Arias. So I know it's not a common name, but nonetheless, it's my name. So, but you can always reach out to me on those two different platforms. I would love to tell you, reach me out on Instagram, but I don't have an Instagram account, so because I'm a
That's
Gen
okay.
Xer, so I mean, yeah, so I have a Facebook account, but I
That's
I normally don't look at it, so
That's funny. Yeah, I think that, LinkedIn is really probably the one platform that has done a great job of bringing all generations to the same place. I think
yes,
there's a
yes,
lot of business owners and folks looking for jobs, but you're right. All the social platforms, we've all got our preferences based on most likely the generation. So that's good
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes.
Well, Scott, it's a pleasure to have you back here today. I think this is such a great topic that not only is important for people to understand, so thanks for giving your expertise, but for those looking for services like what you offer, I think it's just incredible to have your business back in front of the audience again here today, because I work in and out a lot of construction folks, and what you do is just really, really important. And I think that people should take you up on going to your website and seeing how you can help them. So thanks for being here. We appreciate your expertise. Blessings to you, your family, your team, all of the cool things that you're doing. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Jess.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.